Good morning and good afternoon, fellow Area 3 Rotarians and special guests. Welcome to our 12th annual Vocational Ethics Day. So, 12 of them now. My name is John Credelli, and I'm the president-elect of our Eden Prairie AM Rotary Club, and I'm going to be pleased to be able to be your MC once again this year, something that I look forward to each year. Rotary emphasizes 5 avenues of service and carrying out our motto of service above self. And we spend much of our time and efforts on club service, on community service, international service. I know I'll be going to Guatemala with a group of Rotarians here 1 week from now. Quite a group's going. Also vocational service, and then also youth service. But today we want to highlight 2 avenues, and that's the vocational service avenue and the youth service part, by focusing on the importance of ethical conduct lived out daily in our lives and specifically in our work and occupations, and by welcoming the student guests today, which are, it's always a privilege to host you and a pleasure to have you join in on the discussion. So what's going to happen next is what exemplifies Rotary, and it's the key beliefs of Rotarians, and it's typical at a Rotary meeting. And so we will begin with our invocation, once again by Pastor Arthur Rauner of the Edina Noon Rotary Club, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the 4-way test. And so if we could now, let's have Arthur come up, and if you would stand.
Good God, who wants us to be good and to live our lives for you in the world. We're praying for these beautiful young people who want so much to count for good in the world. They are already making big decisions in life. They want to serve the world and make it better. They want to know what's right and do it. They want to serve the poor and feed the hungry and end hate and be bearers of love. Help them be people of vision, to see their country as pioneers and pilgrims did before them, as a city set upon a hill with the eyes of the world upon it, calling us to be a servant nation to all people. Make us all visionaries, called to serve. Thank you for the one who tells his story today in order to help us live humbly our story. Thank you that Rotary is a worldwide company of care, helping us befriend and heal the world. Give us all, please, a humble heart to be your good people. Bless our friendship and this time together and our lunch, and show us all the way. We pray. Amen.
Amen.
We pledge allegiance
I pledge the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the 4-way test. Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Our speaker today is Jerome Main. He speaks internationally for associations and Fortune 500 companies on the topics of fraud and ethics. And since 2001, he's helped business professionals make inspired ethical decisions in some of the most impossible situations. He's been a columnist for numerous industry trade publications and is the author of the book, Diary of a White-Collar Criminal. And he has copies available. There'll be $15. They're available back in this table afterwards, so he's got some with him, and you can welcome yourself to that. Oh, don't steal one. Let me get this one in my bag here just a sec. Please help me welcome the self-taught expert on fraudulent behavior, Jerome Main.
Just this morning, all across America, hundreds of business professionals woke up, ate breakfast, got ready for work, but they're not at the office right now. In fact, they haven't been expected at the office in years, because at exactly 8 a.m., they reported to the maintenance shed for groundskeeping duty, or to the utility closet where they got a mop and a bucket. And today they get to clean stairway number 4. Some of these lucky business professionals, some of these lucky business finance professionals, some of the lucky ones get to use a small portion of their brain today, and they'll report to the education department, and they get to teach drug dealers how to read. And tonight, they'll go to bed on a thin plastic mattress where they will count the years, the months, the weeks, the days, the hours. I remember counting the minutes until I was released from federal prison. For 2 years, my name was federal inmate number 08657-041. A name, well, a number I said or wrote down no less than 10 times a day. To my family and friends, I became the son, the brother, or the friend they thought they knew. To my former business associates, my business partner, my employees, I became the guy they could no longer be associated with anymore. Because guilt by association is very real. And to my kids, I've always been dad. And thank God for me, youth and innocence never judged. I have a story to tell, and I wish it was not my story. I wish I would have heard a story like this years and years ago. In high school, yeah. How about grade school? How about middle school? I wish I would have heard a story like this way back then. For a while, I didn't want to tell my story, and I felt stupid. Felt like an idiot. I didn't want to be the guy, in the community talking about how, I was part of the reason the whole world has crime in it. That's how you feel. I didn't want to tell it. After a while, after a few years, I got some good feedback. And I heard that people were actually getting something out of it. They were getting a lesson on the true consequences and how it affects the average guy, how it affects the average person. I think it'll do a couple of things. One is it'll help you continue to make the good decisions you already make. And for some, hopefully it will help you make different decisions than you otherwise would have made. So welcome to the happy afternoon session, everybody. I'm very, very honored to be able to speak to this group today, especially the students. This is amazing. I don't get an opportunity to speak to students very often, but it's really important to me. I have 4 kids. A couple of them came up through Eden Prairie, and one's still there. So how about that? In fact, here I am. I've been in Eden Prairie since '04, since you guys, some of you started elementary school, kindergarten. I've been to your sporting events. I've been to your choir concerts. How about that? A felon in your community, Part of this is hopefully you'll get something out of this. And hey, what does a criminal look like? Looks like everybody else. You follow these principles that Hank, and I know Hank Shea, federal prosecutor, when I first met him 10, 15 years ago, scared the heck out of me. Here's a federal prosecutor standing right next to me. Now I was already out and everything was over with, but still it was that stigma. But the things that he talks about, these are the things to follow. These are the principles. These are the principles, because it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter how good of a father you are or a mother you are. Those are huge. That's huge. And you get a long way there. But taking missteps, not doing a couple of these things means that you can be eligible. You can be eligible for exactly what I was saying in that intro, which is I got to a point after I was indicted where my family and friends thought they knew who I was. Thing is, I always thought I was the same guy, but I misstepped in a big way. It wound up being a federal crime. And I'll tell you about that. First, I want to talk about definition of fraud. Fraud, this is a big one, but I had a lot of time to memorize it, believe me. Fraud. Fraud is a false representation of a matter of fact, whether by words or by conduct, by false or misleading allegations, or by concealment of that which should have been disclosed, that deceives and is intended to deceive another so that he shall act upon it to his legal injury. There's a lot there, you guys. There's a lot there. But you read Hank's principles, you go the other way on those. Basically, here's the deal. You're tricking somebody out of money. They don't know they're losing money. And you're doing it on purpose. And you're doing it on purpose so that you get money. That's kind of the whole deal. There's a lot of sub-parts to it, but that's the basics. Let me ask you a question. How many people in here know how to commit fraud? Oh, they need a lot more training, I can see here. No, of course you would know how to commit fraud. You know, it's deceiving somebody so that you get something out of it because they don't know. You're tricking them. You can cheat on an expense report. There's fraud. You can cheat on a college application. There's fraud. There's some huge consequences to these things. All right, next question. I'll just ask this. You never know where the FBI is hanging out or if the place is bugged or anything, but I'll ask the next question. How many people have ever done it? Okay, just me. Good. That's good. That's already been established, I think. I was born in a small Midwestern Catholic farming community in a dysfunctional family, just like the rest of us here. So I grew up as a large family. It was a large family. There were 7 boys, 1 girl. I was the second to the youngest, so if I was going to pull any crazy stuff, I had to be real smart because chances are my mom had seen it all before. So I had to be pretty clever. I graduated with A's and B's in high school. I graduated in 1985, if that gives you some frame of reference. And I was a fine student. Our family was very well respected in our small town. We were the kids who would help everybody else. You know, everybody knew, you know, our family, you needed some help with baling hay or moving or anything else. Oh, one of the main boys will help out. That's just who we were. My point is, my mom did a good job. She raised us for the most part. My dad really wasn't around all that much, but they did a good job. I graduated high school. I went to St. Cloud. I didn't want to go to college after school because I was always a musician. I was always in bands and all that stuff. In 1985, I mean, I wanted to be a rock star. That was the whole point, right? I mean, think about it. Minneapolis, 1985, what was big? What was big in Minneapolis? Who? Prince, right. And I looked just like him. So I was like, I got this. Decided to go to college, went to St. Cloud for about a year, moved up to Moorhead State, went there for about a year, then came back and went to the University of Minnesota for about a day, I think. Just jumping around too much. Then one of my brothers, I found out, moved out to Hollywood, California, right? Somebody who wants to be a rock star, that's where you go, man. So I moved out there. Turns out there's no money pursuing a career to be a rock star. So I had to get a real job. My first real business job was I got hired as a file clerk at a rather prestigious law firm right in Westwood, California, right by UCLA. And so I was kind of out of my element. I mean, I didn't know anything about law. I mean, I didn't need to. I was just going to file papers. I'll tell you something. For me, I haven't finished a 4-year degree. And I've been to college after that and a few times, but I haven't finished it. But I'll tell you what, working as a file clerk was the best business education I ever had. I'm not sure what it was at that point in my life, but I was hungry for knowledge, for business and legal knowledge. And I read every document, I swear, that came across my desk that I had to file. I learned corporate bylaws, pleadings, discovery. All this stuff was so interesting to me, to the point where it was showing in my work. And one of the partners in the firm she said she wanted to be a cheerleader for me to go to law school. Well, I couldn't. I didn't have my 4-year degree. But they did pay for, it was a 1-year program at UCLA Law School, which was, it was more of a certificate, glorified paralegal. In those days, what was that, 88, 89, 1988 or 89. So I was excited about that. I did that for about a year at that firm. It was tough for me to sit behind a desk and bill hours all day. For me, that wasn't enough excitement. The most exciting part for me was, when they said, hey, this needs to be filed at the LA County Courthouse in 20 minutes, and we're out in Westwood. I'm on the shoulder of the freeway driving downtown. That was excitement. That to me. So I realized I needed a different type of job. I got a job at a large mortgage banking institution in Pasadena, California. It was a company called Countrywide, and it was their corporate headquarters, and I was going to get to be a loan officer. And I understood that a loan officer, that was like a sales job where I would get to go out and network with other people, other real estate agents and other attorneys, and that was going to be exciting for me, get out and about. Well, I showed up at my job the first day. They gave me a headset, said, here's your cubicle, and answer the phone. You're going to be refinancing loans over the phone. And I thought, oh, here I am again, sitting behind in a cubicle. And there's nothing wrong with that. For me, I needed something different. I met my wife. We had our first child, moved back to a home state of Minnesota. I got a job as a real loan officer, a real fully commissioned, kind of eat what you kill type of full commission. You go out there and mingle with the community to get loans. It was at a company called Norwest Mortgage. A lot of you remember Norwest, merged with Wells Fargo in about, I think, 98. But it was the real deal. And I didn't know how to make myself stand out amongst all these other loan officers. The plan was I would take on and be an expert in one of these special loan programs that Norwest had that targeted depressed neighborhoods in Minneapolis and St. Paul. They didn't pay hardly anything on those small loans because it was a commission, right? It was based on that loan amount. But they were difficult to do, but by doing these difficult loans, I was going to prove to the community that I was good at doing loans, period. And then they would send me their big business where I could make, higher commissions on. The plan worked. In about 9 months, I was getting big loans from these really big realtors in town, and I was doing great. I was making a ton of money. To me, it was a ton of money. $7,000, $8,000 a month commission. That I didn't know what to do with. Well, I found stuff to do with that, but I didn't. That wasn't part of the plan. It was to make a living for my wife and my son, and so that was going to be perfect, more than perfect. But I still did these small, difficult loans because I was still known as that guy, which was fine. In March of 1994, I got a phone call. Now, my job, again, was to network with people in the community, real estate agents, real estate investors, those kinds of things. People who could refer other consumers to me who needed loans to buy homes that were being sold. Because nobody has, well, not nobody. Most people don't have $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 cash to go out and buy a house. They usually need a loan, a mortgage loan. So in March of 1994, I got a phone call from a guy who was a real estate investor. He would buy homes in these depressed neighborhoods in Minneapolis and St. Paul. He would buy homes and then for a low price, and then he would sell them for a higher price, right? So somebody needed to buy it at that higher price or he doesn't make any money, okay? So he would have to refer somebody to me who could get a loan to buy that house from him at the higher price. Now, nothing illegal about that. In fact, there's shows all about this right now, flipping homes, which is, legal, but I'll tell you this, before you ever get into that business, there's a lot of room for impropriety in that business, a lot of room. Doesn't mean it's illegal, it's fine, it's a business, there's a business model. So this guy would buy houses, we'll just say, for example, at $30,000 and sell it for 50, 60, because he bought well. This is what I was learning. I didn't know anything about buying low, selling high, really about buying houses or flipping anything. I just knew about the loan process. So the idea was he wanted to meet me because he understood that I was a good loan officer who could close loans on time, and I was a specialist in this community home loan program that Norwest had. Fine with me. I was excited, actually. He said he was going to be able to refer me, 3, 4, several people a month, because that was his turnover. He was buying and selling that much. So anyway, his name was Milt, all right? Great guy. We talked on the phone all the time. For that first month, we really talked on the phone just to get to know each other. I wanted to know who I was going to do business with, and that when he referred somebody to me, that those people would bring in the right documents. You need to bring in your bank statements or your pay stubs or your tax returns. I told him, here's how I want to do this. I want to make sure that they bring the right stuff. Otherwise, it's going to slow us down and it's going to make me look bad. I'll get this loan done, but I need the right stuff. He also wanted to know who he was working with. And so he would say, hey, if anything's ever going wrong or there's a problem with the loan, you got to let me know right away. Fair enough. But we hit it off real well in that first month. In fact, we had so much in common. He liked the same stuff I liked, same movies, music, sports teams. I mean, you name it. He was like a buddy I just met, but we had known each other a long time. That's how it felt. He finally, after a month of talking, he referred his first buyer to me. And it was a person by the name of Josh. Now, okay, if you haven't already, to the students, you will at some point. If you are already in business, adult, whatever, then I know this has happened to you. You've sat down with somebody, and maybe right away into the meeting or maybe after they've left, you get this feeling like, man, red flags should have gone up a lot higher than they did. You just get this weird feeling. I sat down with Josh, and I'll just throw this out there right off the bat. My job was to take their loan application. It's an application. On the application, this person will need to tell me what their job is, how much they make, what their last several addresses are. I need to know about their assets. Do they have money in the bank? Do they have 401ks? Do they have all this stuff? I need to know that because I'm going to hand this over to an underwriter at the bank, and that person is going to decide whether or not we're going to give this guy the money. We'll say $60,000. And part of that decision is going to be based on whether or not they have the willingness or the ability to repay that loan. So they have to make enough money, right? So the new house payment, they have these guidelines that say the new house payment can't be a certain percentage more than what their monthly income is, right? I mean, that makes sense. If you were going to lend somebody, whatever, $100, you want to know that they at least make enough money to pay it back. Same thing in lending. So I sat down with Josh, and I needed to take his initial information. I needed to write it down. Red flags, like I said, should have gone up higher because I got to the part about employment. And I said, okay, and so where do you work? And he didn't say anything. Josh didn't know exactly where he worked. He didn't say he didn't know where he worked. He just gave me one of these. And I don't know what was going on with me that day, if I was in a hurry or if I was in a bad mood, a good mood. I don't know. I moved, maybe I was on autopilot. I moved on to the next question thinking we'll come back to that and answer it later. I mean, it didn't make any sense. But I get to the next part. And how long have you been there? Okay, oh, I got stupider as this went along. And how much do you make? Why I ever continued at all, looking back on it, made no sense. Now, I had taken literally hundreds of loan applications. Sometimes people don't have all the information they need. So I keep a list. I write it down. What they need to get back, stuff they need to come to me later and get information to me. I had never written down on this piece of paper, find out where you work. I'd never done that. I moved on, Josh, and how much do you make? And I was looking down at the piece of paper, and I didn't want to look up. I just was really rooting for Josh to give me a number. And eventually, in a social situation, you have to look at the person. So I looked up, and he did 9. Yeah, Josh made 9. That was his monthly income. Well, I wanted to be done with this. I knew what was going to happen with this loan. What was going to happen is I was going to take the loan application. He was going to sign all the papers, the disclosures, so I could turn the file in. And then it would just sit on the corner of my desk for a month, and then we would officially cancel it out. I mean, I'd sat with people before, and that had happened. So I figured that's what was going to happen. Josh signed everything. Josh left. I called Milt right away. Said, Milt, what kind of people are you sending me? Said, Josh didn't know where he worked. And Milt was really smooth. Milt said, oh, yeah, Josh has been working with his uncle for the last 3 years, and his uncle just incorporated, so, No, I don't know, Milt. That doesn't make any sense. I said, how about this? You need to know that he doesn't even know how much he makes. Not surprising, since he doesn't know where he works. I said, send me somebody who knows where they work and has an idea of what their monthly income is. And Milt said, well, okay, I got you covered, Jerome. And I said, yeah, send me somebody who makes at least, and I had it figured out because I was pretty quick on my calculator. I said, somebody who makes at least, $13.75 an hour. They're not going to qualify unless they're in that range. The next day, I got a manila envelope. There was a guy walked into my office, handed me a manila envelope. In the envelope were pay stubs and W-2s for Josh. Josh made $13.75 an hour. Did you follow that? That's my moment. That was my moment. The decision I would make at that moment would be the difference to whether or not I'm standing here today. I came up with all kinds of reasons. First of all, I'll tell you something. You get that feeling, and you'll get that feeling, and you've had this feeling. Rarely does your instinct tell you to do the wrong thing first. I really like that. I learned that 4 years too late. Learned it 4 years later. Actually, 4 years later. It's actually a principle of improv. Believe it or not, and if you've taken any improv, it's trust your instinct. That's a huge one. But it applies to business. And I thought about it. That applied in that moment. If you don't follow your instinct, it's actually harder. You actually have to sidestep what you already know is the right thing and start coming up with other reasons. And then you got to keep those reasons straight. And you got to remember which justifications you used so as to justify not doing what you know you're supposed to do. So for me, here were my excuses, my justifications. I received these documents. I know there's something wrong with them, right? I know. I have that feeling. I know. Because I said $13.75 an hour, and what do you know? I said to myself, well, I didn't print out any fake documents. I asked for documents, and I got them. Yep. I didn't do anything wrong. That was one of them. Another one was, hey, if this was fraud, wouldn't Milt have gotten me these documents and said, oh, hey, Jerome, here are the fake ones, okay? Right there, and we're going to commit fraud, okay? And we're going to pay you, okay? So I thought to myself, well, that didn't happen. So, I mean, does he think I'm stupid? That's what I thought. He knows I'm not stupid. So I said $13.75 an hour. These say $13.75 an hour. He's got to know that I know that he did something. So either he thinks I'm stupid or thinks that I'm not going to say anything. And I thought, well, he's stupid. I also thought, you know what? I know what fraud is. Fraud is, fraud? Listen, fraud is Bernie Madoff. It's some big Ponzi scheme. Millions of dollars. This guy's trying to get a loan to buy a house lying about $13.75 an hour. I justified that in my head, that's not a big deal. This isn't fraud. I had several other justifications, but I'll fast forward. I turned in the file anyway because, hey, I didn't do anything. The loan got approved, so the trick worked, okay? And the loan closed, meaning the person got to buy the house. So I'll give you a quick little summary on how that worked for Josh, Josh and Milt. So he would do this. Actually, it's getting a little feedbacky over here, but I'm going to keep that there. Milt would buy a house for $30,000, okay? Cash. He was going to buy it for cash. Well, he doesn't give the seller the cash right there when he agrees to buy it. They're going to agree to do that, to close, to finish that transaction at a future date. We'll say 30 days, say 45 days. Then Milt finds somebody to buy that house from him, because he can do that. I mean, it's very rare. But Milt now has some rights to that house. He can't go in it, but he has the right to buy it. So he also then has the right to sell his interest in the ownership rights that he has, which is very little, but he can sell his rights. So he finds somebody, we'll call that person Josh, and Josh agrees to buy it. Whatever, Milt's going to sell it for as much as he can. So Josh agrees to buy it for $60,000. And it wasn't a crazy high amount. It was pretty high, but comparing it to other sales in the neighborhood, it wasn't crazy. $30,000 was really low. But 60, 50, 60, that wasn't out of whack. So Josh needs to buy this house. He needs a loan, we'll just say, for $60,000. So he applies for a loan. The loan gets approved. The lender says, we'll give you the money, Josh. So then Josh needs to go to what they call a closing, where there's a person there who makes sure all the paperwork is signed between Milt and the buyer. So that's buyer being Josh. All the paperwork is signed, and now Josh owns a house, and Josh is also responsible for a loan. Well, wait a minute. If that's already happened, but Milt didn't exactly finish giving this guy over here $30,000, how can Milt sell the house that he doesn't technically own yet? Here was a little, what do they call it? I don't mean the gray area, and I'm not. It was kind of a loophole. The person who was managing this whole transaction at the end, she basically told me, look, here's how it works. It's very rare, but Everybody was there at the same day. The original seller, the Josh, and the Milt person. By the way, it was never Milt doing this guy in the middle. It was always somebody else. I think that time it was the same guy who handed me the manila envelope. I think that, nonetheless, I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. I was concerned about the loan part. The lesson. You can't be just concerned about one thing when you see other stuff. Because you're involved. You know. Willful blindness. Wasn't that one of Hank's deals? Willful blindness. So what happens is, this loan closes. Milt sells his house for $60,000. Josh is responsible for a loan. That means Milt gets $60,000 because he just sold a house. Well, he takes 30 of that and then gives it to the original seller, and now everything's cool. And it really is. I'd never seen that. That sounded pretty fishy to me. I knew the person who was in charge of all the paperwork that day at the closing. I'd known her way before I met Milt. So when everybody left, I hung around. See, I didn't know whether to run out and call the cops, or with the fact that Milt made $30,000 in like negative 20 minutes, I thought, well, maybe I'll just run out and buy a house, because as long as it's legal, because I figured, hey, if it was illegal, this person never would have allowed it to happen at that closing table, because she was in charge. It never would have been allowed to happen. So she explained this loophole that she doesn't prefer to do it that way, but she's been doing it long enough that she was going to make sure everybody wound up with the right amount of money and that everybody signed every document. And so she said, I'm okay with that. Now I was really impressed with Milt. I mean, a real estate investor? I didn't know any real estate investors. How cool. I was, what, 23, 24 years old? This is awesome. And Milt's going to do this several times a month. My gosh, how much money is he going to make? That's cool. Well, I was doing the loans, and I'll remind you, these loans were very small amounts. These were the special loans, the tough loans that I decided to be this expert in at Norwest. I didn't make much money on them. At that point, I didn't care, because I was getting plenty of other business, and this was just cool, working with this Milt guy. We did about 6 loans over the course of about 6 months. After that first closing, I was out with a couple of buddies at a place downtown Minneapolis. We were going to be going to a Twins game at the Metrodome. I must have mentioned to Milt I was going to be out at this place with my buddies. Anyway, we're sitting there, and this guy walks in. It was the manila envelope guy, right? He walked in just like, oh, what a coincidence. Hi, how you doing? And I thought it was weird, but, well, I guess this stuff happens. I said, hey, guys, this is a guy I kind of work with. Well, he sat down with us, had a delicious adult beverage, whatever, and then he gets up to leave, and he slides $100 into the middle of the table, and he says, hey, by the way, good job on that loan. Well, now I'm feeling really uncomfortable, because now I got to start to justify again. Is this a tip for doing a good job? Well, first of all, even if it is, I'm not supposed to accept that. But then I started going through the guidelines and the rules and thinking about, wait a second, he wasn't a party to the transaction, and technically the regulations say that a party to the transaction can't pay me, but he's just a friend of a guy who's a part. Oh man, here's the thing. If you ever are starting to plan your defense, you're right, red flag, all right, well, we just paid the bar tab with it and walked away. Bartender got a really big tip, but that was it. I blocked that out of my head. I'll tell you about two other transactions. One was a woman by the name of Nicole. She was a great borrower. She was a nurse, and I knew she was a nurse because I had gone to her place of employment, and I had to get some documents one day. And there she was, right, dressed like a nurse. You know, I bought it, so it worked. And she really was. There's no little story after that. So her loan got approved, on a Wednesday, and she was going to be going to this closing the following Monday. Well, she called me the day after her loan was approved. She was super excited because she just got a new job at a nurse at a different place. Well, here's the thing. I'm not going to go into it, but the lending guidelines say you have to have the same job from the time you apply for the loan until the time that you own the home. If you change jobs in the middle, now everything has to be re-verified again. It's a big process. So I knew that. It wouldn't necessarily make sense. I mean, she's a nurse, right? A nurse is a nurse. Well, I knew we had to now redo a bunch of stuff, and it wasn't going to close on time. So I called Milt. I said, hey, man, we're not going to close on time. You know, we'll figure this out, though. He said, what are you talking about? She's a nurse at her new job. And I said, I know, but the guidelines. He said, whose side are you on? He said, whose side are you on? I knew what he meant. I said, I work for the bank. And he said, okay. He goes, I've worked with a lot of loan officers over the years, and a lot of the loan officers I've worked with know that a nurse is a nurse. And I said, all right, let me just, okay, just, hung up the phone. What I figured I would do is I would go to the underwriter to see if I could get an exception, because she had good credit. Sometimes they made accommodations, exceptions, and those underwriters knew me. They knew I was a good loan officer, and I would fight for my borrowers to try to get their loan approved. I wrote it down on my little day planner to check with the underwriter to see if I could do. Well, I'll just jump ahead here. That loan closed on Monday. I never did check. I never did check. About a week later, after that loan closed, I got a package delivered to my house. In it was a bottle of gin and $500 cash. Well, I called Milt right away. I said, hey, what are you doing? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, I'd love to get mail like that. I knew it was Milt. I told you, right? We liked all the same stuff. He knew I liked Sapphire gin, okay? And money, right? So it's all that. I'll tell you the final loan we did. I thought I was smarter than Milt, which I'm still convinced I was. I was going to buy a house for that, the $30,000 and sell it for more. Well, I did that just like Milt, but I couldn't find a buyer. I could not find a buyer. So I called Milt, because Milt has all these buyers. Was the biggest mistake. In fact, I know Hank Shea. He told me, if not for that, I probably wouldn't have gotten in the amount of trouble that I did. Nonetheless, Milt sent me this buyer. That buyer might as well have been from Mars. But we asked for documentation. I didn't worry about what it was. I just put it in the file. I turned it in, but there was a problem. I couldn't be the loan officer and the person selling this house to this borrower. That just doesn't look right. That's just downright unethical. So they don't allow it. So we had this brilliant idea of putting another person in the middle, so that I would sell my house. I actually bought it for $25,000. I would sell it to this person in a cash transaction for $26,000, and then they would sell it to the end buyer for we'll say, it wound up being $57,000. So it was supposed to be $47,000, but somehow after Milt got involved, it was worth another $10,000. Well, good for Milt. Hey, I'll take half. That was the deal. We were going to split it. The transaction got done with. The person got the loan, and then this middleman person got now it was $30,000. Got a $30,000 check, and then I was able to pay off the lender because I had a loan on that $25,000 house. Anyway, there's $30,000. Milt and I were going to split it. Well, half of $30,000 is $10,000, according to Milt's math. But I didn't care. I wanted to be done. I was uncomfortable enough. I didn't want to work with Milt anymore. Anyway, I got my $10,000, but Milt said, hey, you don't want to get $10,000 cash, tax purposes. You know. He would always say that, you know, if he didn't want to really go into why. He said, why don't you give the person who's going to cash the check names of 2 friends of yours, have them make those 2 cashier's checks out for $2,500 each, and then you get your $5,000 in cash, and then there's your 10. I didn't want to argue. I wanted to be done. I knew it was fishy. It stunk. I kept trying to defend it in my head that it's not illegal. It's unethical, but I'm done with Milt anyway. I got my money. The middleman, who was the one who gave me the money and stuff, they went one way, I went the other, and that was it. Never talked to that person again. I will fast forward. There's a lot I could go through. Basically, after that, I became the entrepreneur of the 90s. I climbed the entrepreneurial ladder. Well, it was my own ladder because I started 2 companies. It was a real estate investment company and a mortgage company. The real estate investment company, I bought and sold houses exactly like Milt. I just didn't cheat on the buyers or the appraisal. If the person qualified, they got to buy the house. If they didn't get to buy the house. I felt pretty good about that. My mortgage company was completely straight up. The mortgage company never did loans for the real estate investment company. It was always an outside lender. So I was being squeaky, squeaky clean. Oh, I would say towards the end of 1998, December actually, I was out to lunch with a friend of mine. I was feeling good, man. I had these 2 companies. I was making a bunch of money. I had a really nice, shiny white Mercedes. I built these 2 companies. That's where I got the money. I had a nice house. I had 2 kids by that time. I had gotten a divorce, so that was a good thing too. If you knew her, you'd be like, yeah, okay. But no, she's cool. Not really, but she is. She is. Seriously, she is. So everything was going great. Everything was going great. I was out to lunch with a friend of mine. My cell phone rang. The guy on the other end said, hi, my name is Bob Canada. I'm with the FBI, and I'll be taking you into custody today. This was 4 years after I was working with Milt, right? I didn't know what it was about. I said, what's this about? He said, we'll tell you when we get there. I told them where I was. They came, told me I was being arrested for conspiracy to commit mail fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. And I thought, when did I do that? He said, they'll tell you when you get downtown. We got downtown. The guy said to me right there, he said, hey, remember your buddy Milt? And I thought, yes. Yes, I do. And I knew he was crooked. I knew it. And I said, shocking, you finally got the bad guy, you know. Well, I was in cuffs going, you finally got the bad guy. Because the thing is, I didn't realize how much trouble I was in. I figured they got it wrong. They didn't understand. I was trying to tell them, look, Milt might have been up to something. I wasn't brought in. I had nothing to do with the plan. I didn't really get money. You know, at the time, I forgot. I didn't even remember 4 years later that I got $100 here and a bottle of gin here. I didn't remember it. But it didn't matter. A few minutes later, I was standing in front of the United States federal magistrate. And he looked down on me and he said, Mr. Maine, how do you plead to the fraud charges brought against you today by the United States of America? And I felt about that big. I felt about that big. And I thought, wait, where am I? Seriously? The United States of America? Right now, I'm being charged, being charged for conspiracy to commit mail fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering? Doesn't make any sense. I said not guilty. I went and sat down. They called up another guy. They said, Brian Parr, how do you plead to the fraud charges? He said not guilty, That's when I recognized the voice. Because I never met Milt face to face. Really bad. And I, of course, had justifications for why I didn't. I didn't want to because I felt like I don't want to meet this guy who's probably up to no good. Didn't matter. So his name wasn't Milt. He was somebody else altogether. They let me go on a $25,000 signature bond. I went back to my car. Actually, I took a cab back to my car. The FBI's not real big on giving you a ride back. I went back to my office. I told my business partner what happened. We were going to just ride this out because we knew I wasn't, he knew and I knew I didn't really do anything wrong. Well, came out in the papers. This was 1998. No, this was 98. Now it's 1999. He left, went and started his own business. I was now in this pretrial lawsuit where I told my attorney I didn't do anything wrong. Wound up that I had to plead guilty. I didn't think I was guilty. It took a while until I thought I was guilty, even after I pled guilty. But I didn't think I was guilty because I knew I hadn't committed mail and wire fraud. I thought, how could I have done that? My attorney said, you're going to have to probably plead guilty. First of all, out of the 5 people that were indicted, 3 of them had already pled guilty, and it was down to just me and Milt, or Brian Parr, but it was us 2. I said I wasn't pleading guilty until the government found these 2 cashier's checks written out to 2 friends of mine. That's money laundering. Of course, at the time, I knew it was unethical. I didn't look at it as money laundering. It doesn't matter. Here's the thing. I was involved so long, didn't seem long to me, but it was long enough to have committed a federal crime, the federal crime of money laundering. There was no way I could have won that. I could have said all I wanted, that I didn't do it, I didn't know, it didn't matter. It was a federal crime. It's a felony. In fact, I pled guilty. It's an imprisonable offense. I went to the hearing, I pled guilty, and then you got one more hearing, and that's your sentencing hearing. The people that went to my sentencing hearing was this girlfriend I had. I'd met her right before I was indicted. Lucky girl, huh? Didn't know why she stuck with me through all this stuff, but there she was at my sentencing hearing, and I was very grateful, but I felt bad that she was still here. My mom went, one of my friends from college, and one of my brothers. And the sentence was 21 months, and they said that. And then I heard my mom, crying. And yeah, maybe you haven't heard this, maybe some of you have. They say, hey, you do the crime, you do the time. I don't know if you've heard that. You do the crime, you do the time. That's not really how it works. It's you do the crime, and then everybody around you who loves you, they do the time also. Because my mom didn't raise the 7 kids poorly. She did everything right. But now she has to be in our small little town trying to go to the bakery and people looking at her talking, oh, there's Mrs. Maine, oh, her boys, now we know. It was that kind of thing. She didn't deserve that. On November 4th, 1999, I reported to the federal prison in Yankton, South Dakota, 325 miles each way from here. I could go into a lot of stories. We're really out of time, but I was scared. I didn't know what to expect. It was a minimum security federal prison. People say, oh, minimum security, oh, white-collar prison, country club, That's what they say. Whoever says that hasn't been. And at the time, I didn't know how to compare that. I'd never been to a prison or a country club. So I thought, well, I'm pretty sure you can leave a country club. I was scared. I found a way to fit in to the community. And this girlfriend I had drove 325 miles each way every weekend I was there. Jump ahead, not into the details, but I'll finish up here. Right before I was done, I wound up getting cancer, and there were operations, and it's more of a story, but I wound up being okay. Right before the cancer, I was in the halfway house in Minneapolis, real safe neighborhood, Lake and Hiawatha. Anyone? Okay. I was in the halfway house, and I had to go to the hospital and come back, and chemotherapy and all that. Turns out, because I got to go home on the weekends before I found out about this cancer, but it was very regulated, high security, all that. But I got to go home. Right before I was diagnosed, my girlfriend got pregnant. We conceived a child. After I had the cancer and the chemo, I couldn't conceive a child after that. I was released from prison. My prison sentence ended on middle of March 2001. In July of 2001, how many of you guys were born in 2000 and 2001? Okay. So, kind of had a miracle baby, right? Is what I had. He's back there. He goes to Eden Prairie. He's a senior, Jeffrey. Yep, there's Dad the felon up there talking again. He's come to a few engagements with me, and it's really cool. My family wound up coming back together. I wound up marrying the girl, his mom. We have 4 boys. They're all older, but things are good. It took me a while afterwards to find out what I was going to do. I was asked by a group. It was a little mortgage group in Minnesota to speak at their little event. I got good feedback. It kind of grew from there. I had the opportunity to speak to a lot of groups after that. And now that's what I do. I do some stuff on the side, but that's about it. I want to thank you guys for listening to this story. I hope you got something out of it, some impact. And always be ethical, honest, diligent, and consistent. Your family, your friends, your community needs for you to stay out of prison. Thank you very much.